Bias.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we don't just, tell mystery stories.
Right.
We put the world's most enduring riddles under the microscope of hard evidence.
And today we are tackling, I think you'd agree, the absolute ultimate maritime enigma.
Oh, absolutely. The ghost ship Mary Celeste.
It's the perfect riddle, really, because it's built on this core contradiction that has fueled, 150 years of sensational fiction?
At least.
And it's all because the official facts, the real facts, are so sparse and just so deeply unsettling.
So let's set the stage for you. Imagine it's December 4th, 1872. You're out in the deep Atlantic, maybe 400 miles east of the Azores.
And the British brig, the 𝐃𝐄𝐄𝐏, is sailing along, business as usual, when the crew spots another ship.
Right, and the way they spot it is critical, isn't it? This other vessel, a brigantine, it's moving erratically.
Yeah, not sailing with purpose. Its sails are a mess, some are torn, ropes are just sort of trailing in the water.
It just screams that no one's at the helm.
Yeah.
No one is actively navigating or tending to the rig.
But, and this is the key, structurally, she looks sound. She's moving, sure, drifting, but she's still seaworthy.
And then comes the twist that makes this whole story so personal and so electrifying.
The captain of the 𝐃𝐄𝐄𝐏, a man named David Morehouse, he knows this ship. He gets closer and he recognizes her.
It's the Mary Celeste.
It is. And Morehouse and the captain of the Mary Celeste, Benjamin Briggs, they weren't just strangers.
No, they were friends, colleagues.
They'd had dinner together in New York right before setting sail, just 8 days apart. Briggs was heading to Genoa, Morehouse to Gibraltar.
So you have to imagine what's going through Morehouse's mind. This isn't just some random derelict. He knows the captain. He respects him.
Exactly. He's thinking, why is Ben's ship out here sailing like a ghost? The unease must have been immense.
So after watching it for a couple of hours, seeing no one on deck, he finally sends his first mate, Oliver DeVoe, over with a small party to board her.
And what DeVoe finds is a ship that is, for all intents and purposes, fine, structurally intact, taking on a little bit of water, but perfectly capable of sailing.
But it's completely, silently empty.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We are going to move past all of that fiction, so much of it written deliberately to sensationalize, and we are only going to analyze the hard evidence.
The greenlit facts from that 1872 salvage inquiry.
We're stripping away the myths, because the truth, the real truth, is hidden in those small details in the court ledgers.
And it's so important to just sit with the feeling of that discovery for a moment. What DeVoe's party found below deck is the definition of unsettling normalcy.
It really is. It was a ship that was ready for a long, long journey, but it was just devoid of life.
They found enough provisions for 6 months. Food, water, all untouched.
And in the crew's quarters, it's a story of, an interrupted routine, not a panic.
Personal sea chests were there?
Money was still there, clothing, tobacco pipes. Everything a sailor needs for a voyage was just left behind.
And there were absolutely no signs of a struggle. None.
It's why the mystery is so compelling, isn't it? It feels like everyone just ceased to exist in an instant.
The most heartbreaking details, though, are in the captain's cabin. Because Captain Briggs was sailing with his family.
His wife, Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia.
And the boarding party finds Sarah's melodeon, it's a small reed organ she played, and Sophia's toys.
These aren't just things, they're deep personal comforts. It tells you this family was settling in for the journey, not preparing to flee for their lives.
So you've got all the comforts, all the valuables, all the provisions. The cargo of 7,701 barrels of industrial alcohol is mostly intact.
So the central void, the core paradox, is what's missing. 10 people are gone.
Captain Briggs, his wife, his daughter, and the 7 crewmen.
And this next part. This is the single piece of evidence that a century of fiction has gotten completely wrong.
The one piece of major equipment missing from the outside of the ship.
The ship's single lifeboat, the yawl. It was gone.
And that missing lifeboat changes everything. It's the foundational clue.
It absolutely is. It forces you to just abandon any idea of some impossible paranormal vanishing act.
They didn't just vanish into thin air.
They left. They got into that lifeboat. They left by choice.
So our whole challenge now, the real mystery, is to figure out why. Why would Captain Benjamin Briggs, an expert, professional, devoutly careful seaman, choose to evacuate a ship that was perfectly seaworthy? Okay, so before we can even begin to answer that, we have to talk about the fiction. We have to decontaminate the evidence locker.
We absolutely do, because for 150 years, the most famous details about the Mary Celeste, the things everyone thinks they know, are just, well, They're lies.
Pure fabrication. And we can trace it all back to one specific source, can't we? 1884.
Yes, the origin of almost all the spooky stuff, the whole paranormal angle, comes from a short story. It was called 𝐃𝐈𝐕𝐄 Statement.
It was published anonymously at first in Cornhill magazine.
And the author turned out to be a young doctor, just starting a writing career.
Yeah.
His name was Arthur Conan Doyle.
I mean, the irony is just incredible.
Isn't it?
The man who would go on to create Sherlock Holmes, the absolute icon of logical deduction.
The man whose whole method was about separating hard fact from sensationalism.
He's the one who accidentally contaminates a real-life historical investigation with a piece of fiction that was just so thrilling, so compelling, that the public just absorbed it as fact.
It's an unbelievable twist. But it means we have to be incredibly careful. We basically can't trust anything the public generally knows about the case.
So let's open up the investigator's ledger. Let's fact-check these legends one by one against the actual hard evidence from the 1872 Gibraltar salvage inquiry.
Okay, let's start with an easy one, but one that shows how deep the contamination goes. Myth number 1, the name.
Marie Celeste.
Exactly. Conan Doyle used the French spelling Marie, probably to make it sound more exotic or mysterious.
But the fact?
Unequivocal. All the official record shipping registers, crew lists, the court documents, they all confirm her name was Mary Celeste, an American ship.
So even the ship's basic identity was changed by a novelist.
Yep. But myth number 2 is the big one. It's the most powerful lie, the one detail everyone remembers.
Warm meals.
The warm meals. The legend says the boarding party found hot food on the table, steaming coffee, a half-eaten breakfast.
Implying an instantaneous vanishing, that something impossible must have happened.
It's a total invention. A brilliant piece of fiction designed to create supernatural terror, but it's not true.
What did the sworn testimony say?
The De Gracia crew, under oath, confirmed the galley stove was stone cold. It had actually been knocked out of its place, probably from rough seas.
And there was no food on any table.
No food, no drinks, nothing. The ship had clearly been abandoned for hours, maybe even days, before they found it. The instantaneous vanishing theory is completely false.
That one detail just completely destroys the core of the ghost story.
It does, but myth number 3, the one about the lifeboats, that's maybe the most critical factual error.
The story goes that all the lifeboats were still there.
Right.
Hanging in their davits.
Right. Which, if true, would mean the crew couldn't have left logically. So they must have been taken by aliens or ghosts or something.
But the fact from the official court records
states unequivocally that the ship's single lifeboat, the yawl, was missing.
Okay, let's just pause on that. We've just established that the entire paranormal angle, the whole idea of a ghost ship, is built on fiction. Fiction written by the creator of Sherlock Holmes.
And the simple fact of the missing lifeboat confirms they didn't vanish. They left, methodically.
So our focus has to shift completely.
It does. The question isn't how they left. We know that now. They used the yawl. The real mystery, the one grounded in reality, is why.
Why would Captain Briggs, a methodical, experienced seaman, make the choice to evacuate a ship that was structurally sound?
That is where the real investigation begins.
So, with the fiction cleared away, we can finally start to build a real forensic profile of the abandonment.
Exactly. And the way to do that is to look at the contradiction, the things they left behind versus the very few things they took.
Because that contrast tells you everything about the captain's state of mind.
So let's start with evidence set A. What was left behind?
6 months of food and water.
All their clothing, their personal sea chests, their money, and, of course, the entire valuable cargo.
And just analyzing that set of evidence alone lets us rule out some major theories right off the bat.
It does. First, it rules out a planned permanent escape. You wouldn't leave all your money and belongings.
It also rules out mutiny. Mutineers would take their stuff, they'd take the money, and they would likely trash the captain's quarters. This was neat.
And most conclusively, it rules out piracy.
Because pirates loot. It's what they do.
By definition. So the fact that all the valuables were untouched makes that theory a non-starter.
Okay, so that's what they left. Now let's look at evidence set B. What was taken?
We know they took the lifeboat. That was their exit. But the court records also note that a few key items were missing from the captain's cabin.
The navigational instruments.
The captain's sextant and his chronometer. They also took the ship's register and other papers, which is pretty standard procedure for abandoning a vessel.
This is where it gets really interesting for me. Because this shows the professional mindset of Captain Briggs, even under duress.
How so?
Well, think about it. If this was a pure split-second panic, a sea monster attack, a massive rogue wave, you're not stopping to carefully grab precise, expensive navigational tools.
No, you're just getting off the ship. You're running for your life. You don't take your tools.
A professional captain only takes a sextant and chronometer if he plans to continue navigating.
Right. The sextant to find your latitude from the sun, the chronometer, which is just a very accurate clock, to find your longitude. Taking both isn't for a mad dash.
No, it's essential for an orderly, temporary evacuation. It means the captain fully intends to establish his position and presumably return to the main vessel.
So he's functioning professionally, even in a crisis. He left his valuables because he thought he was coming back.
He believed the evacuation was temporary. He was prioritizing survival and navigation over personal wealth.
Which means we can narrow our focus immensely. We are no longer looking for some spectacular monster or a paranormal event.
We're looking for a credible, temporary threat. Something that so terrified this expert captain that it justified this incredibly risky but logical decision.
Okay, so let's look at evidence set C then. The physical state of the vessel itself. These are the more ambiguous clues DeVoe's party found.
First, that frayed rope. The testimony described it as a sturdy rope about 8 centimeters in circumference. Well, that's thicker than a man's wrist.
Probably the main halyard, yeah. And it was found broken and trailing behind the ship.
A thick rope trailing behind the ship implies one thing, doesn't it?
It's being used as a line, a tow line or a securing line, and it broke, snapped under extreme stress.
Which fits perfectly with the temporary evacuation theory. We'll come back to that.
Then you have the technical failures. One of the ship's 2 water pumps was found disassembled on the deck.
The hatches to the cargo hold were open.
And finally, there was water in the hold, about 3.5 feet of it, which sounds like a lot, but crucially, it was not a life-threatening, ship-sinking amount of water.
So the intermediate verdict here seems pretty solid.
I think so. The combination of untouched valuables and prioritized navigational tools tells us to look for a temporary threat.
And the physical evidence, the trailing rope, the open hatches, the water, the pump, that's what's going to tell us exactly what that threat was.
Okay, so we've established a very clear profile. An orderly, navigated, temporary evacuation.
Right. And now we can use that profile to take aim at all the spectacular, crowd-pleasing theories.
Yeah.
Because one by one, they just don't fit the evidence.
Let's start with the most fantastical one. Exhibit A, the giant squid, the kraken.
This theory always comes up because it taps into all that great maritime folklore. And giant squid, Architeuthis ducks, they are real. They can get up to, 15 meters, almost 50 feet long.
And the theory that a squid plucked off the crew one by one, that got a lot of traction from a journal article in 1904, long after the fact.
It did, but it's fundamentally destroyed by the physical evidence we just laid out. There are 2 huge contradictions.
Warren.
Contradiction 1, physical inconsistency. A creature powerful enough to pull 10 people off a ship, including a captain, his wife, a child.
It would have left catastrophic damage. You'd see crushed decking, snapped masts, maybe even hull breaches. The Mary Celeste was found intact and seaworthy.
Okay, that's a big one. And the second contradiction.
A squid attack simply doesn't explain the human decisions. It doesn't explain why Captain Briggs carefully took his sextant and chronometer, or why a water pump was disassembled on the deck. The theory relies on ignoring all the key clues.
So the Kraken is entertaining, but it's out.
It's out.
Okay, Exhibit B, pirates in mutiny. The human monsters. This is a very real fear in the Atlantic at the time.
It was. The pirate theory usually points to Riffian pirates who were active near the Strait of Gibraltar. The idea is they attacked, killed the crew, and disposed of the bodies.
But the rebuttal is simple.
It's the same as before. Pirates loot. The evidence is overwhelming that nothing was looted. They left money, possessions, and the entire valuable cargo.
So if pirates attacked, they were terrible at their job.
Logically impossible. Then there's the mutiny theory, which was actually a primary suspicion during the original 1872 inquiry.
Right. This was pushed hard by the Attorney General of Gibraltar, Solly Flood. His theory was the crew got drunk on the cargo, murdered the Briggs family, and fled.
This theory has 2 fatal flaws. The first is about the cargo itself. Those 7,701 barrels were not rum.
It was industrial alcohol.
Denatured industrial alcohol. It was ethanol that had been deliberately made poisonous by adding things like methanol. It was made undrinkable to avoid high liquor taxes.
So the crew couldn't have gotten drunk on it. They would have just poisoned themselves.
Immediately. And the second flaw is that Captain Briggs and his crew all had excellent reputations. And again, the ship showed 0 signs of a violent struggle.
No drunken mutiny, no pirates, no Kraken. Which leaves us with the most dramatic and honestly the most damning theory of foul play. Exhibit C, the 𝐃𝐄𝐄𝐏 conspiracy.
This was the suspicion that really poisoned the whole investigation from the start.
And it also came from Frederick Solly Flood.
Yes. He was a very suspicious, very aggressive man. He distrusted Americans, and he was deeply skeptical of the whole situation. He basically claimed Captain Morehouse and his crew murdered everyone on the Mary Celeste to claim the salvage money.
And he thought he had proof, didn't he? He pointed to what he called blood stains on a sword found in the captain's cabin.
He did. He was convinced it was evidence of a massacre, but the court ordered a scientific analysis.
And the rebuttal.
The analysis proved the stains were just rust and some other non-human gunk. There was no human blood. Plus, as we said, Morehouse and Briggs were friends. There was no clear motive beyond greed.
And the 3-month investigation found zero evidence of foul play.
Zero. But, and this is a really important point, Solly Flood's unproven suspicions had a real, tangible impact.
On the salvage award.
Exactly. The 𝐃𝐄𝐄𝐏 crew, who risked a lot to bring that valuable ship and cargo safely into port, they were only awarded about 1/6 of the ship's insured value. It was a pittance.
It was basically the court saying, we can't prove you did it, but this whole thing is so suspicious that we're going to punish you anyway.
It was. And that heavily reduced award, while not a criminal verdict, it cemented the mystery in the public's mind. It suggested something was deeply wrong.
But for our investigation, looking only at the facts, the verdict is clear.
All monster and foul play theories are demonstrably contradicted by the evidence found on that ship.
So now we have to turn away from the spectacular and look at the mundane details that, it turns out, held the lethal truth all along. Okay, we've eliminated the impossible. Now we look at what remains. And this means we have to dive into 2 crucial and frankly kind of boring pieces of evidence.
The ship's cargo and its mechanical state. This is the alcohol and the pump indictment.
Let's start with the cargo. 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol. But the key detail isn't the barrels that were full, it's the 9 barrels that were found empty.
Right. Less than 1% of the cargo was missing. On the surface, it seems like a tiny, insignificant leak.
So why would 9 empty barrels panic an expert captain?
Because the court inquiry, to its credit, found a hyper-specific clue about the material of those 9 barrels.
They weren't all the same.
No. Those 9 empty barrels were made of coarse red oak. The other 1,692 intact barrels were made of watertight white oak.
I mean, it's almost insulting in its simplicity. The core of a 150-year-old mystery comes down to the difference between red oak and white oak.
But that's what forensic analysis is. It's the small, mundane detail that unlocks everything. White oak has closed cells. It's great for liquid. Red oak has open cells. It's much more likely to leak.
So it's not just leaking liquid, it's leaking vapor.
Exactly. Volatile, highly flammable alcohol vapor, slowly and silently seeping out and filling the ship's hold for weeks. The hold was becoming an invisible, pressurized bomb.
Okay, but this brings us to the biggest skeptical argument, the question that kept this case a mystery for a century.
If there was an explosion, where's the fire damage?
Right. If that vapor exploded, why were there no scorch marks, no soot, no sign of a fire at all?
That question was the roadblock until 2006. When a chemist at University College London, Dr. Andreas Sella, decided to replicate the conditions.
He actually built a model of the ship's hold.
He did. Used paper cubes for the barrels and then filled the space with butane gas to simulate the alcohol vapor.
And what happened when he lit it?
He ignited it, and the result was not a fire. It was, in his words, a spectacular wave of flame and a huge blast. But the critical finding was that it left no soot, no scorching.
Nothing.
Nothing. He called it a pressure wave type of explosion, or what's sometimes called a lean burn explosion.
Okay, so break that down for us. What's a lean burn explosion?
Well, a typical fire needs a lot of fuel and oxygen to burn hot for a long time.
Yeah.
But in a closed space like a cargo hold, the oxygen is limited and the vapor is dispersed, or lean.
So when that lean mix ignites,
The flame front moves incredibly fast. It's a literal pressure wave that consumes all the available oxygen in a fraction of a second and immediately extinguishes itself.
so you get a massive boom, a flash of heat, but the whole event is over so quickly that the air behind the flame front stays relatively cool. Doesn't have time to actually set anything on fire.
Exactly. So the ship's clean condition isn't evidence against an explosion. It is the exact signature of this specific type of low-grade vapor explosion.
An explosion that would have been loud, terrifying, and powerful enough to blow open the hatches.
Which, of course, were found open.
So we have the catalyst, the big, scary boom. But that event was paired with a second, massive failure, the fear of sinking.
This is where that disassembled water pump comes into play. The 𝐃𝐄𝐄𝐄𝐏 crew found it on the deck, lying right next to the sounding rod, which is what you use to measure the water depth.
Why was it taken apart?
Almost certainly clogged. Historical research suggests the Mary Celeste's previous cargo was coal, and coal dust can easily foul up a pump.
So a clogged pump is an inconvenience. But for Captain Briggs at that moment, the impact was psychological.
It was existential. He was suddenly blind.
He's got 3.5 feet of water in his hold. And if he can't use his pump or his sounding rod reliably, he has no way of knowing if that's a normal amount of leakage.
Or if it's a critical ship-sinking leak that's getting worse by the second. He can't verify his ship's integrity.
And he's already in the mid-Atlantic, probably worried about the heavy weather. And then, at that exact moment,
boom! The vapor explosion happens. You have two mundane, terrifying failures, creating the perfect storm of fear.
Okay, so we have all the pieces on the board now. The expert captain, the missing lifeboat, the taken tools, the porous barrels, the explosion signature, the clogged pump.
Now we can put them all together. We can construct the only logical chain of events that fits every single piece of the evidence.
Let's do a step-by-step reconstruction.
The final moments.
Okay. Step 1. The Mary Celeste is in the North Atlantic in late November. It hits rough weather. The ship is pitching. Barrels are shifting around in the hold. Step 2. Captain Briggs discovers his primary water pump is clogged. Immediately, he's anxious. He can't confirm his ship is sound in these heavy seas. That anxiety primes him for what comes next.
Step 3. At the same time, those 9 porous red oak barrels have been slowly leaking. The hold is now filled with that invisible, combustible gas mixture.
Step 4.
Yeah.
A spark. Maybe from 2 barrels rubbing together, maybe friction from the rigging. We'll never know for sure. But something ignites the fumes.
And you get that scientifically proven pressure wave explosion. It's not a fiery blast. It's a huge concussive boom.
It's loud, it's terrifying, and it's strong enough to blow the hatches open.
So Briggs, who was already afraid his ship might be sinking, hears this massive explosion, feels the wave of heat, and he makes a logical assumption.
He assumes the worst, that his ship carrying 7,701 barrels of alcohol is about to go up in a massive fireball.
It's a false assumption, but a completely rational one given the information he had. His professional anxiety turns into professional panic.
Step 6. He orders an evacuation. But it's a precautionary, logical, temporary evacuation.
Which is why he doesn't grab the money, or the toys, or their clothes. He fully intends to come back in a few minutes or hours once the danger has passed.
Step 7. They take the lifeboat, the yawl, and they take the navigational tools, the sextant and chronometer, so they can keep their position and get back to the ship.
This one decision explains everything that was taken and everything that was left behind. It's the perfect fit.
Step 8. They launch the lifeboat. But they don't just drift away. They tow it behind the Mary Celeste using a long, sturdy line.
That same thick frayed rope that was found trailing in the water, they're using their big, stable ship as an anchor to wait out the perceived danger.
It's a sensible decision. You're much safer tethered to the brigantine than they are adrift in the middle of the ocean.
Step 9. At this point, the actual danger is over. The explosion was a one-off event, the ship is fine, but then a sudden squall hits, or the wind shifts violently.
And it catches the high sails of the empty Mary Celeste.
The ship lurches forward. The momentum is too much for the tow line, and it snaps.
Step 10. The Mary Celeste sound, seaworthy, and now empty sails on, quickly moving away from the tiny, unpowered lifeboat.
And 10 people are left in a small boat in the vastness of the mid-Atlantic, lost forever.
Victims of a perfect storm of minor mechanical failures and a completely rational but tragically misplaced fear.
That is the complete logical chain. 9 porous barrels and 1 clogged pump led an expert captain, relying on fatally flawed information, to make a decision that cost them everything.
So there it is. We've used the evidence from 1872, and we've combined it with 21st century science to build a complete, rational solution.
The logical, scientifically backed explanation is on the table.
And so I have to pose the final and maybe the most important question to you, the listener. Are you satisfied with that answer?
Or are you, if you're being really honest with yourself, a little bit disappointed, a little let down that there are no pirates or sea monsters or ghosts?
This is where we have to move from forensic analysis to psychological analysis, because the mystery persists, not because of a lack of evidence.
It persists because of a psychological conflict in all of us. And to understand it, we have to talk about a key mental shortcut called proportionality bias.
Proportionality bias. This is the absolute heart of why the legend of the Mary Celeste is so hard to kill.
It's a simple idea. It's the assumption our brains make that big events must have big causes. We instinctively look for a cause that feels proportionate in scale to the effect.
And the Mary Celeste is a very big event. It's a 150-year-old global legend. It's a symbol of the terrifying emptiness of the sea.
So our brains go searching for a big cause, a giant squid, a violent bloody mutiny, a government conspiracy, paranormal activity. Those all feel proportionate to the scale of the tragedy.
But the true solution?
The true solution, a slow leak from 9 porous oak barrels and a pump clogged with old coal dust, is a small, mundane cause.
It feels unsatisfying.
It feels profoundly unsatisfying. The mystery of the Mary Celeste persists because the logical solution is psychologically disappointing. It forces us to accept that catastrophic, legendary results can come from ordinary, minor errors.
We would rather believe the exciting fiction that Arthur Conan Doyle wrote, The Lie of the Steaming Coffee, than the boring, terrifying truth of a series of small, preventable mistakes.
So let's just summarize for you one last time. The claims of monsters and ghosts. They originate in fiction and are contradicted by the intact hull and the missing lifeboat.
The claims of piracy and mutiny are contradicted by the untouched cargo and valuables.
And the claim of foul play by the 𝐃𝐄𝐄𝐏 crew was dismissed by the court for a total lack of evidence, even if that suspicion left a stain on the record.
The only theory that aligns with all the hard evidence, the 9 red oak barrels, the pressure wave explosion, the disassembled pump, the missing tools, the missing lifeboat, is the perfect storm of mundane failures.
It's a logical, temporary evacuation that became tragically permanent when a rope snapped.
And the evidence for this rational explanation has been there for decades, in court records and verified by modern science.
So we have solved the mystery of the ship. But we are left with a deeper question for you to think about long after this deep dive is over. The question is no longer, what happened to the Mary Celeste? The evidence tells us what happened.
The deeper question is, why do we, as humans, need the simple, terrifying truth to be a complex, spectacular lie?